Welcome to the Vitamin Professor podcast, brought to you by VRM Media, publisher of Vitamin Retailer and Nutrition Industry Executive magazines, in partnership with Nutraland USA. I'm your host, Gene Bruno, Professor Emeritus of Nutraceutical Science and Chief Scientific Officer of Nutraland USA. So the purpose of this podcast is to help educate the dietary supplement industry about the science of nutraceuticals and other relevant topics. If you like what you hear and see, don't forget to like and subscribe. So, I have a special guest today, and this gentleman's name is Fred Monsuur, and he's based in Belgium, and he is the Chief Scientific and Development Officer at Sil'Innov. He's also the Director of ConSilation, a consultancy focused on Silica Based Innovations and the use of mesoporous silica in food, nutra, pharma, and more. Fred has over 25 years of experience in the field, including research, patent filing, new business development, technical sales, and product development and launch. He believes in the power of innovation, out-of-the-box thinking, and problem-solving to propel human health forward. Fred holds degrees in medical chemistry and pharmaceutical technology and has a passion for people, classic cars, music, and mesoporous silica. Fred, welcome to the Vitamin Professor. So, Fred, I have some questions to ask you, and let's sort of start with the first one. Here's a term that not everybody has heard of. People have heard of silica, silicone. What is silicon?
Yes, that's already a good question. And you are missing one letter. It's not just silicum, it's silicium. And silicium is,
Silicium.
yes,
Very good. Thank you.
and there is a big confusion already. I'm happy that you say some say silica, silicon, silicium, some even say silicone, and then we are talking about plastic surgery or insulation technologies. This is not what we do. We are talking about silicon or silicium, which is 47% of sand. Sand is SiO2 in chemistry, and the Si part is silicium, Si number 14 in the periodic table, or as we say in Europe, the table of Mendeleev. It's not an invention, it's really a mineral, an element out of the periodic table.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Well, that's interesting. So, silicium, I'm understanding that it has some different roles to play in different kinds of disease states. But what is its role in? Is it something that's just good for animals? I mean, we find it in plants. Does it play a role in plant health as well?
Yeah, it's a very important question because silicium is playing a role in all the connective tissue. Disregardless if you look to a plant or an animal or us as human being, silicium gives strength to all your connective tissue. And this is neglected, this is forgotten. It's so normal for people that we don't think about it anymore. And I always use, for example, the plant bamboo. Bamboo is an extremely strong plant, as we all know. I cannot eat bamboo. There is only one animal in the world who can eat bamboo, and it's not human. It's the panda bear, as we all know. And why is bamboo so strong? Because it contains over 70% silica. And if you then remember from the previous question that silica contains 47% silicium, then silicium is bringing the strength, the force to this plant, to the leaves, to everything. And this is what we also see in our human being, in the connective tissue, skin, hair, nails, bones, tendons, ligaments. Every tissue contains a little bit of silicium to give hydration, to give strength, to give everything that is structured in the body.
So, very good. So, is silicium involved in collagen synthesis? I had read before that silica or some of the related compounds were involved in collagen synthesis.
Yeah, that's correct. So we all know already for more than a decade the industry of collagen is exploding. It's still growing very fast. It's very interesting to see,
Yeah,
and
for
everybody
sure.
is eating like 5 grams and 10 grams, big spoons a day. I always say if you need 10 grams of something, then something is wrong in pharmaceutical medicinal industry, because if you need so much to get a result, then it means that most of it is not working. So you need to overdose to get good results. But that's a different topic. Why is silicium then so interesting? Because nobody realizes that collagen exists of minerals and amino acids. Of course, we have amino acids, we have peptides, they build into proteins, and these proteins they can build into collagen if they use silicium and disulfide bridges. If you don't have the mineral inside your protein structure, it will stay a protein, but it will never turn into a collagen structure. And that's why we say collagen is a mineralized protein, and proteins, collagens are important for all your connective tissue because your body is full of collagen. But if you don't have the silicium, it will not stay or it will not turn into collagen. So that's why the link between silicium and collagen is so important. And also in literature, you will see that collagen and silicium, they will promote fibroblast formation, for example, for your skin properties, and they will promote osteoblast formation for your bone properties. And that's also confirmed by clinical trials.
So it sounds like there's a really good case for if somebody wants to use a collagen product for making sure that they're using silicium as well, or companies that are formulating collagen products for including silicium as part of that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Would you agree?
That's what
Yeah.
you also see
Okay.
with the big collagen producers, that they are also stepping away from the standard collagens, the unnaturated or denaturated, that they are trying to make these smaller molecules that are able to get absorbed, and that they now realize that the missing mineral, silicium as we call it, that it needs to get included in a collagen treatment.
Yeah, and what's interesting, as a little side note, is when people are looking at like hydrolyzed collagen peptides, these smaller
Yeah.
peptides, as you were referring to that one of the interesting things is when you look at some of the studies that are done, we're seeing an increase in the body's own collagen production with that. So it makes us to me, it makes an extremely good case. Since you need silicium for the production of collagen, if you're taking a collagen product and hoping to produce some more of your body's own collagen, you're going to need the silicium. So yeah, that makes total sense. Now, of course, silicium is found in different foods, right? I mean, you get it
Yeah.
in some of the different foods out there. Yeah, we may not be able to get it from bamboo, but I know that related compounds are found in things like oats and wheat and other things. But it's not as well absorbed. Is that correct? Would that be the rationale for supplementation?
Yeah, so what we see is just like bamboo and just like all the sources that you just mentioned, there is silicium in nature. That's for sure. The challenge of all minerals, and not only silicium, but also magnesium, iron, all the minerals that we love to take, they have one big challenge, which is the fact that once a plant is maturing, the minerals inside the plant are also maturing, which means they are going into a polymerized stage. And I always use the example from the beach. If you have beach water, which is salty water in Europe, for example, and it goes to the beach, the sun is shining, then this water will evaporate, and the soluble minerals in water suddenly are not water anymore. They are a sand bead, which is salty sand. And this is containing several minerals, but the minerals are so polymerized that it's not solubilizing anymore, because if I take sand and I put it in my glass of water, I can shake for 10 years and the sand will never turn back into the minerals they were in the sea. And this is the challenge, that in nature there are a lot of minerals, but most of the minerals are polymerized and therefore very low available for absorption. So when we need more minerals, we need also to supplement and not only eat healthier food like we all are taught by our parents and grandparents. You eat this vegetable for this mineral. Yes, that's true, but at a certain time and age, you need much more mineral supplementation, much more vitamin supplementation, and that's not possible through food only. I hope this is helping a little bit.
Yeah, no, that really helps to clarify it. So, um, what exactly? I understand now what silicium is, but what exactly is bioavailable silicium?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I had a pause in your question.
Absolutely, no problem. So, um, I understand what silicium is, but what exactly is bioavailable silicium?
Yeah, that's that's very important, because I see in the world of supplementation that many people call their products bioavailable but don't know what it really means. And when you start investigating, what they really say is, we have tested the absorbability in the body, but absorbability for me is not bioavailability. Bioavailability means that it's indeed
No, it's not.
absorbed by the body, but that you find it back in your plasma, that you see it in your plasma, and that the body is consuming what you supplement into the body, and that your cells are really consuming the minerals or whatever we are testing. And that's for me bioavailability. If we say we have a bioavailable silicium, it means we have tested it in the gastric system to become activated, to get results. It is through the intestine to become absorbed, and then it's found back into the plasma, and then the bioavailability is proven that it's absorbed into the cells, giving better skin properties or better bone properties, depending on which combinations you use. And with combinations, I mean, for
Very
example,
good.
that silicium with vitamin D3K2 is very interesting for bone, not necessarily for skin. And if you combine silicium with vitamin C and some collagen and other interesting ingredients, it's good for skin. If you combine it with chondroitin or glucosamine, it's good for tendons and ligaments. This is what I mean with combinations, but it's always multi-combinatorial usage.
So then, is this material, is the mesoporous, is that the actual branded material that is the bioavailable silicium?
That is indeed what we have developed over the last years, mesoporous, a mesoporous material. And this is our branded technology for providing, as we call, triple A silicium, which is activated in the stomach, absorbed through the intestine, and available in the plasma, assimilated by the body. That's our triple A certification concept that we developed with mesoporous. Yes.
And is the term, is the poro, the porous part of it, referring to the fact that this particular mineral compound is more porous, and does that play a role in its solubility, its bioavailability?
Yeah, that's also the part of the patent which is the most important. So we developed a completely porous particle which is called mesoporous. And if you go very technical, then meso in the UPAC definition, chemistry definition, means that you develop a porous structure of 2 nanometers up to 50 nanometers, and our patent is a porous structure of 2 to 6 nanometers. this sounds like Chinese for most people, also for my children. So I always say if my children don't know what I explain, then my end users also don't know what I talk about. So what is the easiest way to visualize this particle, and why is it patented? Why is it unique? Why is it different than all other siliciums? Because if you take a particle and you imagine a sponge, and you take the sponge and you have a mesoporosity, and you start opening the sponge until you have a flat surface, then we calculated that the flat surface is 700 square meters. 700 square meter, that's a soccer field of surface area and a tiny particle. And on the surface we have millions of silicium elements available with a lot of hydroxyl groups, which is very important because my body is full of hydroxyl groups. It's hydrophilic, and this combination makes it unique by an extremely high surface area thanks to this porosity.
Very good. That's really interesting. I definitely have a better understanding now of bioavailable silicium. And so let's dig a little bit deeper into, you've touched on this a little bit already, but why do we as human species, why do we really need silicium? Just give a little bit of an overview of that. You covered it a little bit already, but a little more.
Yeah. So when we are born, we have everything we need to start growing. Not only silicium, not only collagen, you have everything, all your minerals. Your mother gave you everything you need to get growing in a fast way. And we all know that we grow very fast in the first around 18 years of our life, and then it stagnates or it stops. And this is what we see, that silicium is by natural available when we are born. But the older we get, the less silicium we have, the less minerals we have. Our body is not a manufacturing plant that can produce its own minerals. You need to supplement these minerals. And what's happening is that after the age of 20 and then reaching 30, 35, we lost 50% of our mineral concentration. This is not invented by myself. It's confirmed by literature that bone mineral density is decreasing after your 40s already. And it goes 1% per year, and when you're 60 it goes to 2% per year, and it keeps declining. So if we don't supplement the body with minerals, we will at a certain point have a very low bone mineral density, which, as we all know, results into osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, and all these challenges, not only in women health but in general health. This is a very big challenge. So we need to prevent that we go below a certain level of minerals. And that's why supplementation of silicium is so important, because not only literature is confirming that your bone mineral density has decreased by 50%, but also your collagen concentration has decreased by 50%. And the reason for this is that if you don't have silicium, your collagen cannot stay healthy. So you think you have osteoporosis, but in fact, your body is screaming for healthy collagen. And your skin is asking, please give me more silicium, but I don't have more silicium. So the body is very smart, and the body starts to search, where is my biggest silicium concentration? I need more silicium. And what will it do? It will go to your bone, because in your bone you have the highest concentrations available. It will start extracting it to protect your skin, and then you get step by step all the challenges that we face in hair, nails, skin, bone, and so on. And that's why I can talk about it for days, but this is the shortest I can do. It's the age dependency of everything we have, and we feel it every day when we get older.
Indeed. And, Fred, there's so many biological processes and biological components that we need that do decline with age. And so it makes total sense that silicium is one of those critical ones. Now, with regard to the mesoporous, can you explain a little bit about how the mesoporous works once we swallow it?
Well, once we swallow it, it goes into the stomach, of course. That's the first place where all our food is going. And what is very important is that silicium, the only absorbable form of silicium, is called orthosilicic acid. And again, this is technical, but it's important because that's the only soluble absorbable form. And then in the intestine, we are then creating the orthosilicic acid to become absorbed through the intestine. And once absorbed through the intestine, it's going into the plasma, which is what I explained earlier with the AAA concept, bioavailable silicium. And then we see out of clinical trials in human, in skin trials, beauty trials, but especially in hospital trials for osteoporosis and osteoarthritis, that the silicium is boosting certain enzymes that help to produce more osteoblasts. So we have recently, for example, finished a clinical trial started at university level, ex vivo, in vitro, and then it goes to in vivo, it goes to hospitals, there are doctors involved, and so on. And what do they see? That the osteocalcin concentration is increasing, which means that you get better bone quality, that the collagen concentration was increasing, which is good for bone, but also for skin. And all these combinations together means that silicium orally taken in is producing orthosilicic acid, which is at the end bioavailable, absorbed into the cells, giving all these clinical benefits that you can find.
Very good. Now, I understand that silicium actually helps improve the absorption of some vitamins. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is this is why I was scared about this podcast, because they told me I was going to speak to the vitamin professor, but you already say, oh no, I'm talking about a mineral to a vitamin professor. What's going wrong here? But what's really interesting, and this is the latest findings we have in osteoporosis research, is that we tested patients where we only supplement silicium. We tested patients where we tested vitamin D3 and K2 because these are the vitamins important for bone. And then we tested vitamin D3, K2 plus silicium. So we compared blancos with silicium, with D3, K2, and everything together. And what did we see? That if we put silicium with the vitamins, that the efficiency of the vitamins increased. And this is a beautiful thing. And we started doing this also with other active ingredients. Let's see what happens if I put silicium with resveratrol, or I put silicium with saponins, or I put silicium with all kinds of healthy natural ingredients. And we see every time when we do this with our mesoporous technology that we can increase the efficiency, the bioavailability, and the success of the other active ingredients. So it means that there is a beautiful synergistic effect that gives a better function at the end. And that's of course what we all want, because the better the products can give their benefits, the lower the concentration is required to get supplemented. If you get better performance of your supplement, you need less milligrams. If you have less milligrams, you have less side effects, you have faster absorption, you have healthier aging, and all these things together we call our small is beautiful. We should go for healthy, low dose with maximum benefits.
Very good. Thank you for that. So we know that there's a lot of different components that are necessary for healthy bone. Certainly, calcium is one of those components, but certainly not the only one. Can you explain a little bit about the relationship of silicium to bone health in consideration of calcium?
Yeah, so I have to be very careful now because I'm not a big fan of calcium. And that's specifically based on literature from the last years that is confirming that all the calcium treatments that my mother and my grandmother and all mothers in the world are taking, like 1 gram or more per day, that they often use the wrong calciums, and that these calciums are giving arteriosclerosis and calcified arteries. And this is it's really a pity that this is happening. So when I ask my family or my friends what is the most important mineral to take for your bone, the first answer they will give is calcium, which is old school. This is not true anymore. Yes, we need calcium, but not in the 1.2 grams like in Europe, perhaps in the US also. It should be a normal low dose in highly soluble versions. That is important. And why then silicium? Because silicium is improving also the absorption of the calcium, but we should prevent. We are not preventing enough that the calcium is going out of the bone. And that's why the vitamin K2, D3 are so important to prevent the decalcification of bone. And if we can prevent this, then the collagen will get healthier, then the bones will get healthier and stronger. But luckily enough, we have seen, and especially for menopausal women, this is important, that we can reverse the bone mineral density, and that's unique. So we have seen in a more than 2-year clinical trial in 5 hospitals that if you are already in the demineralization stage and you are already getting into the osteoporosis stage or osteoarthritis, that we can reverse the engineering of the bone, as we might say, like scientists, and that we can remineralize the bone. It will go slow, it will take longer, but it is working. And we see also faster bone healing with fractures of older people, that they still get good bone healing, which is a very important thing, because the older we get, the less minerals we have. And that is the big challenge, that the skin is healing slower, the bone is healing slower, and nobody is thinking about it. Why is it healing slower? Because the collagen is not healthy, because the fibroblasts are not active anymore, because the osteoblasts are not active anymore the older we get. So we need to reactivate all these mechanisms, and that's where silicium is different to calcium.
Very good. Well, and I think there's a couple of important points that I think people should take home with them from this, the answer that you gave to this particular question. And bone health, the issue of osteoporosis, is not a calcium issue per se. Yes, calcium is needed, but there are a lot of factors that are required, and they don't work independently. They work in combination.
Yeah.
So to your point, so somebody who is taking calcium, but let's say they don't have sufficient vitamin K2 present, the ability of the calcium to stay in the bone where it's supposed to be, where it's going to make vitamin K dependent proteins, isn't there. Now you have it floating around in the bloodstream where you don't want it
No.
to be staying. And if a person has sufficient vitamin K2, either as MK7 or actually MK4, you can actually help to keep that calcium in the bone.
Yeah.
And of course, and then many other nutrients, including the silicium, makes a very good case for having a restructured thought on how to approach bone health. And that approach, I think, can involve a well-absorbed forms of calcium, but you need the K2, you need the D, you need the silicium, you need a different approach, not just the old-fashioned approach of just pop a bunch of calcium. So yeah, so Fred, thank you for that response to that whole question and the relationship to calcium. I think that really does help to clarify the situation. Okay, now it's funny when you think about all of the different minerals out there. There's some that are very popular these days, magnesium and many others, but you really don't hear too much about silicium. Why is it that we don't seem to talk about that as much?
Not yet. No, that's a very good question, and it's very difficult to answer this one because I found already in the 1800s from Mr. Pasteur, and we all know Mr. Pasteur for
Sure.
pasteurization technologies, fermentation technologies, bacterial technologies. And he already said in the 1800s that silicium is a very important mineral, not to be neglected, not to be forgotten. And now we see in the last decade, we see that finally people are re-understanding the importance of silicium. And it's really also now in literature referred to as the neglected, forgotten micronutrient. And this is a very important terminology to realize that, for example, these supplements that you see on the market when you get 50 plus years old, then suddenly everybody is suggesting you to take multi-mineral, multivitamin tablets every day. So I just got 50 end of last year, and I bought my first bottle of 50 plus age mineral silicium supplement and vitamin supplements, and I checked the list of all the minerals and vitamins, and they were all there except one. There was no silicium in there, and then they say, no, no, there is selenium. I say, no, I'm not selenium. I'm looking for silicium, number 13. It's not selenium, and it's such a pity, and that's why we are really making a voice for silicium. It should not be neglected. It should not be forgotten because it's so simple, it's so small, and it's so important for better bone healing and skin healing, wound healing. For diabetics, I've recently done some literature research on osteocalcine for diabetic people because they have slow skin healing, they have slow bone healing, slow wound healing. And why is this? Because the cells don't have energy to produce osteoblasts. And they need something to boost the osteoblast and fibroblast production for wound healing, especially. And that's where we see that silicium, but also glutathiones, which are important for energy inside the cells, these antioxidants, all these things together, but certainly the neglected silicium should not be forgotten.
Absolutely, becoming more and more apparent that it's very, very important for a number of things. Let me ask you a question. I've seen this term used before in relationship to other nutrients, the term bioactivated. How does that term relate to silicium? I've heard bioactivated silicium.
Uh, well, my marketing team will say this is the best marketing word there is because it's activated, it's nice, it's cool to use, it attracts people, it's spicy, it's and so on. But for me, bioactivation means there is a lot of ingredients in nature that are bio, but not necessarily actively absorbed and doing something actively.
Ah,
So we activate the ingredient to become really successful in my body.
so that form of silicium is in itself bioactivated, and that's what gives you sort of that better bioavailability. Would that be a
Yeah,
correct statement?
yeah. And that happens, this starts in the stomach. If it doesn't solubilize in your stomach, I'm very sorry to say so, it goes to the toilet. And I'm not paying a lot of money for ingredients to go to the toilet. I'm paying a lot of money to have them in my body to give good functions, healing functions, medicinal functions, healthy aging functions. That's what I'm paying for. And that's why we call the first step the most important. If it's not activating to become soluble, it is useless.
Understood. So now, my next question is kind of my favorite thing about just about any nutraceutical that I'm talking to people about, and that is the studies. Can you share with us some of the studies that have been done on silicium with regard to its benefits for beauty, for joint health, and such? Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's it's a huge portfolio of studies already for more than 4 or 5 decades, so it's not easy to do in a few minutes.
Well,
But
summarize.
it's really interesting to see that disregardly if the study is done by us or by very good concolleagues, because I don't like the word competitor, we are all fighting to get silicium on the market. And of course, we all believe that we have the best one, but I will tell you that we really have the best one. And why is that? Because we have beautiful clinical trials in joint to show that in joint people with pain, with movement, that they get an improved result. And we always test silicium only versus silicium with other active ingredients that are interesting for this particular case. In skin, we have a beautiful, and we are one of the only ones, a 3-month clinical trial. Clinical trials are already very expensive for a few weeks. Imagine for 3 months where you supplement silicium, and we compare silicium only with silicium differently, but for beauty, 3-month beauty skin trial, where it's confirmed that it gives better nails, stronger nails, faster growing nails, better skin elasticity, all these parameters that the world of beauty loves. And I always like to say, if France is buying something for the beauty, then we have done a good job. And our first success was the beauty pill, they call it. It's very strange to say, the beauty pill in France, which is containing silicium next to some collagen shots. And this was the biggest success story we had already in France. And France is the country of famous names that I don't want to pronounce, but you know enough about France to say which brands are important there. So if your silicium suddenly pops up in France, then this is cool, of course, that's great. And then our third most important clinical trial is, in the meantime, in more than 5 hospitals, where doctors confirm with MRI scans and with a lot of volunteers that we have beautiful results in bone healing and bone repair and bone remineralization. So these are for me the 3 big topics: the mobility, which is joint movement, bone repair, and the healthy aging, which is skin, hair, nails, all these things together. And what is important for me is people who want to look good, they also want to feel good. So if you have pain in your bone and you look good, I don't care. I also want to have less pain. And that's what we also confirmed in our last clinical trial from last year's, that the vitamin D3 apparently is reducing the pain in bone when you have the problems of osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, and this combination with silicium that helps you to grow bone better, to get better, stronger bones, and the D3 that helps to reduce the pain and avoids with K2 that you lose more calcium and it gets calcified in the bone. This is my favorite topic. Beauty is important, of course, but if you don't feel happy, then beauty is not important anymore. But that's my personal opinion.
No, that's great. Thank you for that. So, talking to our listeners who are in the industry and are maybe brand owners and they're producing different types of products. So, the answer to this seems somewhat obvious to me based on what you've just described. But let me ask you anyway: what type of products, what type of dietary supplements do you think should contain silicium?
Well, perhaps I can ask back to you to see if we find a mutual agreement, but for sure,
Yes,
my number 1 would be bone, of course, if you agree.
I agree. Number one is bone. I think So I'll just give you I'll give you my answer to the question. I think the most important one is bone. I think the one that might have the biggest potential market is the beauty angle here, but I think that the bone is the most important, and I think that that joint health is huge, and with and here in the U.S. with the aging of America, as the populations get older and more people demographically are shifting towards the older end of the spectrum, they're going to have more osteoarthritis, they're going to have more osteoporosis, and of course, your face and your skin and your hair, everything is going to be aging. So this seems
Yeah.
like a great ingredient all around for all of those kinds of things. Um, and I wonder too if it's more of a niche market, but I wonder if people like who are undergoing something like chemotherapy and are losing
No.
hair and stuff, if this could be something that could possibly be beneficial for them, just to
No.
help in that way.
That's something that's for me actually the most important, because in my family, unfortunately, we have a lot of cases of autoimmunity, cancer treatment, and so on. In the last years, it was crazy to see with my parents-in-law, friends, and so on. And what I found so frustrating is that the only thing that the doctors are prescribing is big Baxters full of very expensive calcium sources, which is exactly what they should not be supplementing. They should be supplementing D3, K2, silicium, a little bit of normal soluble calcium, not these very expensive Baxters that are put into their veins. Because if we can do this before they start their chemotherapy or their immune therapy, that you boost your body to be ready to prevent the killing of all your collagens, because that's what's happening during chemotherapy. You kill all your healthy proteins in your body. So you lose a lot, but that doesn't mean that the amino acids are gone. The building blocks are still there, but they don't know how to turn back into collagen because all the minerals are gone during chemotherapy. And we need to remineralize these bodies to teach these cells that they can stay into a healthy collagen, that you prevent loss of a lot of collagen. And this is what we see also in clinical trials, that cells that are under stress, like chemotherapy or other therapies, that if they are pre-treated with silicium, that you lose less collagen, that you lose less hyaluronic acid, that you lose less, that you have faster cell reproduction, which is very important for wound healing, which my favorite topic will be for the next year. Is wound healing is such a big problem for diabetics and older people, and we see that we can make a difference also in wound healing and surgery and all these things that are important. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, let me ask you another question. I know that there's more than one source of silicium out there. Can you tell me what would be the importance in choosing the mesoporous over some of the other sources of silicium?
That's a difficult one because we always want to stay positive, and I don't like to talk negative about other products, but we are already convinced that silicium is important. So that's important. No matter which silicium that is bioavailable, you can use it. But why would we then propose to use ours and not the other ones, of course? And that's because we managed to make it in the lowest dose possible because we have the highest bioavailability. And the higher the bioavailability, the less concentration you need. Why is this interesting? I don't want to take silicium only in a big tablet or a capsule. If I take something, I want silicium, D3, K2, glucosamine, chondroitin, vitamin C, a little bit of collagen. I want like 10 ingredients in one capsule. This is not possible with our conculeagues because they have such a big volume before you reach your daily dose that you need 2 or 3 capsules a day, and that's not what you want. You want one tablet, one capsule, one sachet, whatever a day, which contains almost everything that you like to have for healthy aging. And that is not possible with other ingredients. So they all supplement OSA. So if you go to the boxes and you look on the labels of the tablets, capsules, whatever you're buying, you will always see silicium or orthosilicic acid or silicon. They can all do it, but the volume they need to give you the desired daily dose is so big that it's not combinable with other active ingredients. And that's for me the most important, that we need combinatorial formulations that have synergistic effects and not a box with 10 tablets with one ingredient per tablet. No, one tablet with 10 ingredients. And I can talk more about it, but then it gets too complicated.
Well, I would just reiterate what you said in that, as somebody who has formulated a lot of products in my career,
Yeah.
that it's important to be able to offer a material with high bioavailability, and furthermore, to be able to put less of it in your product means you have space and room for other things, or even just a lower dose. So there's a lot of advantages, it sounds to me, from the mesoporous cell. For choosing that one.
Well,
So,
thank you for the translation.
yeah. Um, so, aside from the fact that we're getting less silicium as we age? Are there any other challenges that older populations face with regard to silicium intake? So for
Help me a little bit.
yeah, so for example, this is what I'm thinking. Uh, a lot of times, people who are older um, have things like gastroesophageal reflux,
Yeah,
and as a result, they're taking maybe some medications.
yeah.
Is that going to impact? Is that going to impact the bioavailability or the availability of silicium?
Well, that's it's one of my other frustrations that most doctors they don't think about the fact that they prescribe medicines and then the patient starts to complain about gastric pain. What do they give? They give gastric medication. And then I asked the doctor, okay, but if you give this gastric medication, pH changer, proton pump inhibitors, whatever, you are changing the gastric system. So your food and your medicines will not be solubilized anymore as before because you changed the pH of your stomach.
Right.
So suddenly your medicines need different concentrations. They are less soluble or more soluble. Everything is changing and nobody is taking this serious. And this is so important because if your medicine, if your silicium, if your collagen suddenly doesn't digest anymore into an available source to be absorbed, it goes to the toilet. And so, yes, we did trials because we see that elderly people have a completely different digestive system, especially when they start taking gastric medication. And we don't want our silicium to be gastric dependent. It should work at any pH. If you take gastric medication or not, you should always have a silicium that works. And that's what we tested, that the standard products of silicium on the market, they only work at pH 2.5. If you go higher than 2.5, it becomes sand, it goes to the toilet. If you take mesoporous, we designed it in such a way that it's soluble, it activates at pH 2.5, but it also activates at pH 5 if you take some strong
Wow.
gastric medication.
That's
And that
great.
is
Yeah.
important, and that's one of my other frustrations, but let's not talk about it too much.
Very good. In the beginning when I introduced you, I mentioned two groups, and I might have mispronounced the first one. I mentioned Sil'Innov and Eytelia.
Yeah,
Could you just tell us briefly a little bit about what each of those are?
yeah. So Sil'Innov is Silicium
Sil'Innov.
Innovations, and Eytelia. So Eytelia is the mother company of Sil'Innov. Sil'Innov is like the early R&D group who starts designing things based on customers' requests or when we see a gap in the market or we see an active ingredient that's not working properly because the bioavailability is too low. Then in Sil'Innov we start with early R&D. We see, can we make it food and pharma compliant? Can we upscale it? Is the equipment available for upscaling? Is it not too expensive to upscale? Is it, and so on and so on. And once we have a proof of concept and we can go to kilo scales, then we bring it to our mother company, Eytelia, who starts upscaling into the quantities that the market requires, which can be up to ton quantities, and they will then commercialize it with our partners like we have Maypro in the US.
Very good. And that was actually going to be my next question, which I think you've now answered. Is if product developers and formulators are listening to this podcast and said, yeah, mesoporous cell sounds pretty interesting. Where can I get it? Here in the United States, you mentioned your partner Maypro. Are they the exclusive distributor of mesoporous cell in the United States?
Well, they say so, and my boss says also so.
So that must be the case. Well, Fred, thank you very much for being my guest on the Vitamin Professor. It's just been quite enlightening. I learned a number of things, including how to pronounce silicium correctly, and learned a lot more about it. So thank you for being the guest today. And for all of you who are watching this, if you liked what you've heard and what you've seen, please like and subscribe. and we'll see you next time on the next edition of The Vitamin Professor.